The following podcast may contain adult language and an abundance of salt, so get ready, nerds, because we are talking to the man, the myth, the legend, Joe Flanigan. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for listening to this very special episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. I am joined, as always, by my fantastic panel of nerds. Matt Vader's freaking out in the corner here. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm always freaking out.
I never get over
these interviews. I'm like, dude, I'm just some stupid little podcast guy, and talking to people that I've literally spent untold, God knows how many hours in my life watching on TV and going, man, that guy's really fucking cool. It's like I wish I could be him. Get stuck in across the universe with cool people and go on adventures. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Also joining us, the ambassador of estrogen, Jude.
Hello.
Are you as excited as I am?
I'm pretty excited. Yeah.
Right on. And the frustrated producer of the show, Matthew Kadish.
And as a longtime Stargate Atlantis fan, I am so excited for today.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. And the guest of honor, Joe Flanigan. Welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm just glad that I fooled everybody for that.
No, you were pretty freaking cool. Like my wife is a huge Stargate Atlantis fan. And when I told her a couple months ago, like, oh yeah, David Hewlett's going to be on, she like lost her mind. And then a couple weeks after that, I'm like, hey, Colonel Sheppard's going to be on the show. She was like, what is going on right now?
I can tell you, they're out of work.
No,
they're very desperate right now.
Yeah.
I think they're going to do it for free.
Yeah. It's going to come on some dorky podcast.
Pop our bubble.
Yeah. You guys ain't shit.
Well, I have to say, it's very funny because generally speaking, I don't like to go in the wake of David Hewlett.
I don't blame you. Neither does Jason Momoa.
Well, he just kind of like made himself a member of the team. Hewlett did.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he just like, I'm gonna be on your podcast.
He's like,
okay.
What are you talking about next week?
Yes, he can do that. The man can talk at a high velocity.
Yes, indeed he can.
Yeah, he'll be joining us later. He's in the bathroom right now.
I'm sure he is.
He's got some questions for you.
He still texts me a lot and just tells me what he eats. He'll just be like, I just had a Reuben sandwich with potatoes.
Yeah,
great.
Didn't he text one of you guys something about what he was eating?
It was probably Kadish.
Wasn't me.
Well, he is my best friend.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I was going to say, it was very funny because I didn't know he was going to be on C until later. And I certainly didn't think I'd be doing scenes with him. And then that became very hilarious.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Jason. I go, man, can you believe I'm doing these scenes? He goes, I know. And I get to kill him.
Well, it was funny because we asked Chopper, are you casting any other Stargate Atlantis actors for season 3? And is Rachel Luttrell going to show up and stuff like that?
Who?
Yeah, he's like, I've never heard of that show.
Let's get the whole team together.
Yeah, we asked Chopper, I'm like, did you know you hired a bunch of Stargate Atlantis people? And he's like, no idea.
Well, since we're already talking about Hewlett and Momoa, I'm going to fire off my first question.
Yeah, go for it.
Joe.
Yes.
It's very hard hitting. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. In the great Hewlett versus Momoa fight, whose corner did you have?
Whoa. Yeah, well, it depends because, like, if being a nuisance is a weapon, then David Hewlett's like a nuclear bomb.
That's great.
I have to say, like, some of the greatest moments of being on Atlantis were me and Momoa giving Hewlett a hard time.
Aww.
I mean, we just loved it. It was, it was endless. Yeah, and let me give you one example. Jason and I actually lived together. See, it was really funny. Jason needed a place, and the studio had a 2-bedroom apartment for me in this hotel. And Jason said, well, let me stay there until I find a place. Great. Cut to 3.5 years later.
Aww.
And so we would sometimes drive to work together. We had a driver, and we had this double cab black Ford F-350 or something, a very manly car.
Mm-hmm.
And we were driving, and we see David Hewlett is driving. He drives this very funny, like red Ford Echo. And not only does he drive it, you know how some people drive with a steering wheel like right here,
Right.
like Mr. Magoo, and it's Hewlett, and Jason goes, "Oh, look, it's Hewlett." We see him ahead of us. We're like, "Oh my God, it's Hewlett!" And it's like Mad Max. We're coming up on him with a black F-4 and Jason has no idea. I mean, David has no idea what's going on. He doesn't see us, and then Jason just pulls his pants down and just sticks his ass firmly against the window, and it's the most open possible way.
That's hilarious.
And there's David, and he's driving, and he goes like this. He goes, it's like Marlon Brando in the Apocalypse now. He's like, "Oh, horror." I will never forget that moment.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
we struck terror so deep inside him. I'm not sure he's ever the same after that. I don't think he's ever seen I don't think he'd ever thought he would know Jason so anatomically well.
Oh man, that's pretty funny.
You get the perception from consumers watching Jason Momoa. He's a freaking superstar nowadays. That he's just like this ultra cool dude, and I always wonder if that's just like the actor's public facade, and then he's like super undercut, toned down a little bit in person. Apparently not. Apparently he's just the super cool, crazy dude all the time.
No, it's really funny. When he first moved in, my apartment was suddenly transformed into like a cave. Like I had buffalo heads, axes all over the place, and I was like, Jesus Christ, we're gonna like sacrifice some animals or something.
He really is Conan the Barbarian.
He really is.
We're gonna put
And it was very
target
funny
in the corner.
But the wonderful contradiction was, I thought, he's going to be a mess. The place is going to smell. It's going to be messy. He's kind of the opposite. He's like really clean, and like occasionally he'll come in and he'll be like, "Hey, he calls me Joji. He's like, Joji, check it out. I have some little mi-fieu with some brie and cranberry. Would you like some?" And you're like, "Sure." Turns out I'm the slob. I'm the bad host. No, he was like a really thoughtful, like, it was hilarious. He was like,
"Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's awesome." That sounds like a dope roommate.
Yeah. He and I could bond over charcuterie.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Sure.
I have we both have special little cutting boards for that very purpose. I'm down. All right, I'm going axe throwing, and I'm sharing charcuterie boards with Jason Momoa someday.
He's a super solid guy. And, truthfully, he's handled the situation remarkably well. I'm in touch with him quite a bit. And, I know a few people who've kind of reached that level. It's not easy. It's not easy because you're literally inundated with attention. And so it takes a certain type of person to like be stable under the circumstances. So I think he's done a pretty good job.
Yeah, he's up there in that TMZ zone where you can't get a moment of peace probably if you go out. So yeah, I get it.
But speaking of being ultra famous, when you started working on Stargate Atlantis, what was your
by the way,
experience?
Ultra famous and my name aren't like working. I've never been ultra famous. Let's just make that abundantly clear.
Yeah, with the Stargate fandom, I don't know. I think you're a pretty big deal. We think you're a big deal.
I texted one of my friends today that we were talking to you, and his quote from him was, "I'm about to cream my pants."
It's a good
Thanks,
thing.
dude.
You're welcome. You're welcome
Zoom.
for knowing that.
Is that a Zoom call?
Anyway, what was your experience working and dealing with like the Stargate fandom and getting into that? It was like kind of an already established group of people there. What was your experience jumping into that world?
Well, it's very funny because there's a group of us, I would say a solid 10 years previous to Stargate, there was a small group of us working actors, and we really were if it wasn't you that was going to do a show, it was a friend that you knew, and there was this circulating group of people, and you all kind of had known each other, worked with each other, and that was like kind of Hollywood television. And then, you brush you have an exposure to certain fan bases. I think the first show I did, if I'm not mistaken, was Sisters on NBC, which had quite a fan base apparently, and that was the first time I ever received like fan mail. I didn't even know what that was. I mean, when I first got it, I was like, okay, must give a thoughtful reply to every one of these and blah blah blah. Of course, they knew more about the show than I did, and I thought it was incredibly. I thought it was incredible to be an actor, and you spent so much time putting performances out there, but with no actual feedback for a long time. And then suddenly you have this feedback thing. So I had a tiny bit of experience with it. And I had done a lot of television before Stargate, actually. And then I got to Stargate. We started shooting it. I didn't really know what a big deal it was. I'm not sure anybody quite knew if it was going to be a big deal. And they said, how would you like to go to Comic-Con? And I thought, well, that's remarkably arrogant and premature. Like, why would we go to Comic-Con? We haven't, like, our first episode airs Thursday. You want us to fly down there on a Saturday? I mean, what? And talk to an empty room? And so we go down there, and I still don't know because they take you through the back, and then they announce you on the stage. And I heard the audience, and I flipped out. I couldn't believe it. It was like 5,000 people packed in a room clapping for one episode. And I thought to myself, wow, man, this is incredible. I guess, SG1 basically has their fan base, and it just got transported to us as well. So I'd never had any experience like that at all. And that was... I was like tremendously grateful to be part of a franchise, tremendously grateful to be, a spinoff of a successful show. And then the rest just became fascinating to me. I'm still fascinated by it. I mean, I feel like, wasn't it like 127 years ago or something? It feels like a long time ago.
You didn't have any gray hair in that first episode.
That is true.
That beard is fantastic, though, by the way. I'm super jealous. I need to grow mine back out. So speaking of that first episode, that you actually shared some screen time with Richard Dean Anderson, and one of our patrons, Nick, wanted to ask you, did he give you any advice on set about either acting itself or just being part of this franchise?
That first year, I flew back and forth between LA and Vancouver a lot. I had my wife and kids down here. And so Rick also lived in Malibu. We both live in Malibu. So we ended up on the plane a few times together. And I was sitting next to him, and I said, so Rick, any advice? Now, I don't know Rick well, but I know that I'd say mercurial would be a way of putting it. And, to me, he's like he's a legend. He's MacGyver, right?
Yeah.
Right.
He's MacGyver. And he just looks at me like, what do you mean advice? What are you talking about? And I was like, well, I'm starring in the spinoff to your show. And I thought, well, maybe there's, I don't know, some advice. He goes, no. That was it. That was the end of the conversation. I was like, oh,
That sounds about
okay.
right in my
That
head.
was very
Yeah.
presumptuous of me to think that I could ask him for advice. And literally, maybe an hour later, he just turns to me as a mid-sentence. He goes, don't do the gobbledygook. And I was like, what? Is he crazy? What is he talking about? Like, he's answering a question I asked an hour ago.
Uh-huh.
And he said, gobbledygook. I go, what do you mean gobbledygook? He goes, all that sci-fi jargon that doesn't make any sense? He goes, if you're good at it, they will keep giving you more. And I knew exactly what he was talking about.
That's amazing.
And I was like, oh, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So I went about sabotaging all the expository sci-fi jargon in my dialogue. And I was like, God, I really can't say that. That's really complicated.
You're like, we'll
Maybe
give that
David
monologue
could
to
say
Hewlett.
Sheppard makes so much more sense now to me.
It just got dumped on David Hewlett.
Yeah.
And I just is so satisfied watching this happen. And then I got to just say the quick little smart ass thing. And then he got stuck explaining the whole episode. Fantastic. And
Best piece of advice.
It
Don't
Beautiful.
do the gobbledygook.
I'm telling you, it was pure gold.
That's
Pure
awesome.
gold. Yeah. So, he's a TV veteran. I mean, I can't even imagine how many hours of television Rick has done. Wait, look who's coming to join us.
I was just going to say here, Newman.
Newman's
Yeah.
here.
I have a question for Newman.
Yeah.
Are you a good boy?
Well, no, keep doing that. We'll just hang on that
Yeah,
for a little
yeah,
while.
yeah.
We'll-
Look at Daddy handsome face.
I'm a bulldog guy too. We don't have any at the moment. But we had two. My wife's always had bulldogs, and we had two. They lived to be 10 and 12 years old.
Yeah, that's about right. Well, and let me just tell you another interesting fact about bulldogs. Out of a rank of 150 dogs on intelligence, they rank 147 on intelligence.
Yeah, that's about right.
So they make me feel smart, and sometimes they make me feel pretty.
Yeah. My favorite part of bulldogs is the snoring when they're sleeping in your bed and won't move, and when you take them for a walk and they just stop and refuse to keep walking, so you have to like carry them the rest of the way.
Yeah,
So
they're hilarious. I mean, dollar for dollar, they are great entertainment. Now, somebody reminded me that I'm kind of like somehow some cruel like guy because they are artificially inseminated and delivered cesarean, and that I'm unwittingly part of some really twisted eugenics experiment, I guess. But again, they're entertaining.
They very much are. Yes.
Kate is just constantly upset at our dog for being too smart. He's too smart and he's too strong. It's not the dog I wanted.
Yeah, there's something to be said about, that's why cats. I'm pretty sure cats are trying to kill me. Yeah,
that's accurate.
I just don't trust a cat. It's like the cat is like, that's too smart. He's figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
So
Joe, I was kind of curious how you came to be cast as Colonel Sheppard in Stargate Atlantis, but also what was it like basically being the leading man for this series? Like you were in pretty much every episode. You carried the series on your shoulders. Like how stressful was that for you?
Well, again, as it turned out that I think Atlantis was the 12th network episode that I had done. So a 12th network pilot I had done. So I had been cast as a lead of a number of other pilots, and I understood the pressure because when it doesn't go well, they blame you. And if it goes well, they all take the credit. That's how that works, and that's just the way it is. When I got to Atlantis, it was very interesting. So these two stories converge about how I was cast and what it was like to be the lead. I had a kid, and suddenly I was like, my God, I got to feed that thing. And I was doing all these different shows, and it was lucrative, but it wasn't stable. And somebody came along and said, well, there's this show, a spinoff of Stargate. I had no idea really what Stargate was. And they explained that this is a show that's been very successful, and this show will probably run for a while. And that I found very appealing. But when they told me it was like science fiction television, I had a very outdated view of what that was. I thought it was more like Star Trek, where they were very earnest, and it was a little bit like Shakespeare in space, and it was stiff. And I thought to myself, I actually don't know if I'm good enough to be on Star Trek. Like, I don't know if I have the chops to stand in a onesie and deliver some very earnest comment about an alien without laughing, that is. And so I first said no. I said, I can't do that. And then they came back and they said, well, actually, this show has a level of self-deprecation and some humor and things like that. And you can take this character and play with him a little. And I thought, whoa, that's very different. So I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do with this character right away. And that's the thing I brought into MGM, and I brought it in, and they seemed to like it. And it was very odd because it was like literally done in 24 hours, like poof. Casting usually doesn't work that way. Casting is like a long process, very often, where people, you're on a list that gets shorter, maybe gets longer. I mean, the whole thing, it's a real pain. And this thing was sewn up and done in a very short period of time. But I still didn't understand it. I still didn't even understand what it was. I didn't understand what a big deal it was. So I went into the whole thing with a little bit of ignorance, and I had actually decided not to watch Stargate SG-1 because I was afraid that Rick's character, I was like, I don't know what that character is, but I don't want to even subconsciously like take his character with me. So I didn't start watching SG-1 until after we started shooting. Now, having said that, I go and I start shooting the pilot. I think everything's going great. And then, the producer, yes, the producers came in, or I believe they called my manager or something, and they were upset with the performance. They were upset that I wasn't taking the character seriously enough. Now, that's pretty funny when you look at Rick's character about taking things seriously. And I made a conscious effort to take the situation seriously. Like if we were in mortal danger, we were in fact in mortal danger, and not to pretend we were not in danger, but to also be a little glib and self-deprecating and a little wink to the audience that we're having fun, but not so much as to dismiss the urgency of the situation. And that was a kind of a tough line to straddle. Interestingly enough, a lot of the producers that were on SG-1, one of the things they were growing a little exhausted by, they felt that Rick was never taking their material seriously. Right? I don't know how they got that idea.
Yeah, I wonder.
Gobbledygook.
And I think Rick was also a producer, so Rick would just like, I'm not saying that, and he would just write whatever he wants. This was their chance to recalibrate the Stargate in the way they wanted it to be. So they thought Atlantis was their chance to start from scratch and do the exact thing they wanted. However, I stuck to my guns, and my manager was saying, hey, listen, they're really pissed off. And by the way, they're investing what must be like $100 million, right, in the launch of a show. It's nothing to laugh at. And so, you do feel the pressure. And there was a lot of stress and running around and barking about whether I was playing the character correctly. And I just stuck to my guns. My manager told me a story. He represents Renee Zellweger. And Renee had a similar experience on Bridget Jones. And he said, at one point, an actor has to dig his heels in and know his instincts and stick with his instincts. And I said, screw it. Yeah, me too. I'm just going to stick with this. And if I'm not the right guy, then get rid of me. But I'm not going to play him the way they are telling me to play him. I'm not going to play him that way. Because I don't want to be stuck playing that character. And once the show aired and it did really well, that was never brought up again. So
nice.
And it is interesting because a lot of the shows you do, you introduce a character, and it's really the writer's character. They're handing you a character, and you're taking it and you're trying to find the right thing for it, and you're interpreting their material. But the ownership is really with the writer. Once it's performed and put out there, the ownership shifts to the actor. It's very interesting. So the writers start writing to the way you're performing, and it actually starts to really get better and better and better. And so that's what happened. And David Hewlett's character is a classic example of that, where he just possessed the character, and then they suddenly could write for it. And so that pressure, I felt like I was semi-successful, like deflecting that pressure. And I think I had done enough TV to stick to my guns, because I actually had made mistakes in the past where producers, nervous directors and producers over direct, they over manipulate, they micromanage an actor and the character, and you're left with pure crap. So I had seen it, I had been victim to that, and I said, no, I know what this guy is. I know what I want to watch. This was what I would want to watch. So that's the way I did it.
Okay. So there's some scuttlebutt out there that Amazon is possibly going to do a resurgence of Stargate. Is there would you be interested or willing to revisit Sheppard in some form or another, maybe in the future?
Or have you already been cast as him?
Or if it happens, or
I've been cast as McKay.
oh gosh.
Oh yeah, no, I feel a lot of affinity toward that character. I mean, it would be upsetting if somebody else was playing it, but I don't think that would happen either. I think they'd probably just create a new character. You know, the problem is, look how big Amazon is. Look how big, like MGM screwed this whole thing up. This is a very, very, very lucrative franchise. And that they sat around and the studio went bankrupt was one of the worst things that could happen to the franchise, because it was a small part of a larger puzzle, and it really got swept under the rug. And I think that people didn't understand how big Stargate was. I think Hollywood still doesn't understand how big Stargate is. But, and I've said this before in a couple of interviews, I took an interest in getting the franchise. So I brought this idea to a couple investors, and they liked the idea. And so we sat down and we had talks with MGM. And MGM was having real problems at the time, so we knew they needed money. However, they could not approve the sale of any assets at the time, because it was still such a mess. And so they agreed to a licensing agreement. And it was like a 5-year term with first right of refusal. And we were able to look at some of the numbers on the show. And the numbers were it's a lucrative franchise. Let's just say that. Now, having said that, what's complicated is that was the land of DVDs. Huge DVD sales for SG-1, for example. Huge DVD sales for Atlantis in the first and second year. But then DVD sales just disappear. So it was unsure at the time, like where the show gets remunerated and how it gets remunerated and those sort of things. I thought this was going to happen, and then the studio went bankrupt. It's very interesting when a studio goes bankrupt. You literally call and like the housekeeper answers. Nobody's there. And so about a year later, after they reemerged from bankruptcy and were under management with Spyglass, I went to Spyglass. I had a meeting with them. I laid out our plan. They thought it was a genius plan, except they didn't want to do it. They wanted to give the franchise back to Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, which I thought was interesting, because I did explain to them. I said, look, with all due respect, look at how much the movie made versus look at how much the series made. I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, in one season alone of one of our shows, we net profited more than the entire movie in the entire 30 years of the show. So why would you go to the movie? And what I realized is that these network executives have very short professional lifespans. And to sit around for the whole fruition of a show is, they don't want to do it. They can red light a green light a movie, red light. They can red light all they want. In fact, I think that's where we find them, in the red light district. But they can green light this project as a movie, and they could possibly see it come to fruition within the span of their tenure at that studio, and that helps them professionally. Often a TV show, by the time it's profitable, those network executives are gone. So the desire to invest in long-term projects was pretty limited. So it's shocking. But since then, the model has changed dramatically about how shows can make money. And you can now package 13 episodes and pretty much almost always break even somehow and find some distribution. So blah, blah, blah. That's my little spiel on the business.
Kind of going along with the MGM going bankrupt, I think I speak for all Stargate Atlantis fans out there that we were all shocked when it was announced that the series was canceled.
Yeah.
Like, how did you find out about that? And what was your reaction and the crew's reaction when you guys found out that that final episode was it?
Well, honestly, we felt betrayed for a couple reasons. One is they had us go down to Comic-Con that year and field questions as I was sitting next to, you know, the producers and writers. And people were asking me about the show coming back. And I felt pretty confident that the show was going to come back. And I remember responding accordingly. And after I found out the show was not coming back, I played the tape back in my head and I go, I think those guys are giving me some pretty funny looks when I said that. They knew something that I did not. And they knew that I don't know who gave them this choice, but presumably it was somebody in the studio that had a budget issue. They said, we can spin Atlantis off and cancel Atlantis, or we can keep Atlantis. And so, from my understanding, the people who bought MGM were really hemorrhaging money. They were losing money. I think they bought the studio at the time for like $3 billion, and they could not get an asking price for much more than $1 billion or something. There were issues. They were about to take a huge hit. In order to create the street value of MGM had plummeted so dramatically, but in order to create more street value, they had to be seen as a functioning studio making new product. And our show was not considered new product. And a new show is considered new product. And so somehow they were given the choice. You can do a spin-off and cancel Atlantis, or you can keep Atlantis. And so the choice was made. And the choice was made well before I was informed about it. So it felt like, God, I wish they had told us. And that's just the way that goes. That's just the pecking order and that, the way it works. So it's too bad, though.
I just remember feeling like the show ended so abruptly and quickly. As a fan, we're like, wait a second, I want like 3 or 4 more seasons of this.
Yeah.
What? We're back home at Earth now? What's going on?
Yeah, Atlantis,
it was crazy.
Atlantis was probably one of my favorite sci-fi shows going on at the time.
But let me just add one addendum to what we were saying.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I went to the president of MGM Television and I said, I can't believe you're doing this. No show has ever been spun off, successfully as you cancel the mothership. None, ever, period, has it ever happened in the history of television. Often you need them to run concurrently and then you can go off. You show me one example of a show that spun off without the original episode staying on the air. And he couldn't. And I said, you could literally bury this whole franchise. This is a risk that, he goes, yeah, that's a possibility. And, well, that turned out to be the truth. And it was let's just say I lobbied hard to keep the show. And, well, I was unsuccessful. So there you go.
Well, I know all Stargate fans in general are like super stoked to see Amazon do something with the property.
It would be great. But by the way, in defense of the writers and producers, we did believe we were going to do 1 to 2 straight to video movies. So the last episode of Atlantis was not supposed to be the last segment. It was supposed to be the beginning of a couple movies. So it did end in a completely bizarre place. Yeah.
Yeah. But real quick, I wanted to ask you about the 2-parter Die Hard on Atlantis that you did with Robert Davey. Basically my favorite 2 episodes of the show.
It's Robert Davi, by the way.
Davi, sorry. I just know him as a
mispronounce
Fratelli,
his name, by the way.
Kate is just known for mispronouncing words.
Yeah, I'm the destroyer of words. But that was probably my all-time favorite episodes of the series. And I was just wondering, when you got that script and you're like, this is basically me doing Die Hard, like how awesome was that?
It's so awesome too, because it was like action adventure. I mean, it's the greatest thing ever. I mean, I love it. I literally so many times stopped and I was like, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing I did when I was 12, but they're paying me money. This is awesome. And it's just like, it was fantastic to be those characters. And it was fantastic because they really let me play that character. Like after the first and all the stuff I talked about, the first episode, they let me play that character the way I wanted to play it. And so I did take elements of different, the Bruce Willises and the Harrison Fords and stuff, and I got to plug them in and make an amalgamation of that and stuff. So they were awesome. And action adventure, by the way, is the best because people don't understand this. Movie sets are so sedentary. You're literally sitting around for so long. And I'm not a guy who can sit very long. I have to be moving. I mean, I just have to be moving. So action just kept me, kept my vitality. So the more action, the better for me. And that was true for Jason too.
Along with doing action scenes, do you have a I can't believe I didn't die during that scene story?
uh, well, yeah, there was a couple times. I actually always thought they erred on the side of being way too cautious. Mostly because I'm a bit of a yahoo, and I'm like, yeah, no, I want to jump over that thing. That'll be fine. Like, no, we should get a stunt man. They're like, no, I want to do it. And there was one scene, and I'm trying to remember what episode it was. It might have been Doppelganger or something, but they had to put a harness on me and pull me. A lot of times you'll see, like, if there's an explosion, a guy goes back, he's on a harness, and he's getting yanked. And you have a whole harness attached to you. So I was on the top floor, and there's a kind of a patio like thing with these steel railings with breakaway railings. And they were going to yank me, and it's a big deal because I'm falling 35 feet or whatever onto a pad and everything else. And they go to do it, and the guy's like, okay, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, go. And that's how you're going to get yanked so that you can gird for it. And we get there and it's like 1, 2, 3. And I'm like this, like what happened, right? Like nothing happened. So I was like, shit, to get ready for something like that and for it not to happen is kind of strange. Another cut. We do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't happen. I look back and I just, right. I mean, when I wasn't thinking about it all. And the breakaway railings did not break away.
Oh no!
Yeah, that was intense, and that's when you realize you can get really badly hurt on set. And I know there's been a lot of talk about this, especially with Alec Baldwin's stuff. And I got to tell you, the protocol for safety is pretty stringent on sets. And if you pay attention to the protocol, you probably should not get hurt. There should not be any issue. And I don't mean to segue to something like that Alec Baldwin's movie, but I will tell you that everything seemed to go wrong there. Like, I don't understand at all how that happened. I when they started explaining it, especially on the news, I said, these people do not understand, especially the journalists, how the protocol works, because they would never report on it like this. This thing is all wrong. I mean, they were talking about the first AD grabbing the gun and giving it to Alec Baldwin. Like, ADs never, ever, ever grab weapons. They will inspect a weapon. They do not grab weapons. Armorist grabs a weapon, gives it to the actor. The AD doesn't grab it. So when they're saying these things, they're like, why did the AD take the gun? Anyway, so we had really great stunt guys, really great armorists. And so I felt like it was a tremendous privilege to do what I think is one of the few big action adventure TV shows. There's not a lot of action adventure TV shows sometimes. They're expensive. So,
Yeah.
Especially ones that the whole family can watch. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Nowadays everything's got to be super rated R.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a huge fan of stunt people. I believe that they make the shows what they are, especially the action adventure shows, because they sell that action to the point where it's believable for an audience to watch on screen. I love talking with stunt people. They always have the craziest stories. I follow a bunch of them on Instagram, and they do their practice runs in this big padded room, and they're kicking and flipping. Did you have any experiences working directly with the stunt people?
Oh yeah, I mean,
just having a
I mean, I
blast?
would say actually, in a lot of ways, the stunt guys are the guys we got the closest to.
Yeah.
Especially Jason and I. Like, when we went out with the stunt guys. We
Yeah.
still do. They come down and they'll call me up and stay in my place and stuff.
It's cool.
They tend to they're taking huge risks. I mean, it's just, I think there's only one arc for a stuntman, and it's theoretically to become a stunt coordinator. Otherwise, you're going to just get beat to crap. And the stunt guys are just like dudes. I mean, they're like us. I think that's why Jason and I liked them. I mean, like, of course, we're going to be an actor if we're going to get paid more. Of course, we're going to do that. But, you know,
Yeah.
if circumstances were different, we would be like, yeah, cool, let's be a stunt guy. So my youngest son is a very coordinated dude, and he has very good friends that are in the industry that are in stunts. And even the kids have done a bunch of stunts, and they wanted my son to start doing stunts.
Oh man.
And then suddenly I was a little scared. Yeah, because
Yeah.
like, yeah. And then I realized, like, I don't know. It's like, do you want your kid to play football? Good question.
I have a friend who I used to work with, and her husband was a stunt guy. And I remember her coming into work one day and being like, well, my husband's out of work for a while. He got impaled in the eye.
Impaled in the
And
eye.
I was like, what?
I always get stressed out by the scenes in movies and TV shows where somebody gets lit on fire. And I'm like, that's a dude in like just a suit and some goo.
Yeah.
And they're freaking lighting him on fire.
And that's
It's
considered
insane.
one of the great initiations into stunthood is a burn.
A baptism by
Yeah,
fire.
that's considered like you haven't really worked in stunts until you've been lit on fire, so to speak.
Yeah. We heard the story of when Christian Camargo almost went down with the set in season 1 of C.
Oh, really?
Funny.
Yeah.
I don't know that story.
Oh, yeah. He told us a story. He was like, yeah, the whole set was on fire. And it was a scene where it was the final scene of season 1, I believe, where his character is just looking down. He's supposed to be dead. But
Dead or dying.
Dead or dying. And he's like, yeah, I was just sitting there on set and I had my eyes closed. And it was supposed to be this scene where the camera came into my face or close up. He's like, and then somebody just randomly grabbed me and yanked me out as the building was falling down on top of me. He's like, I didn't know what was going on, but apparently they were not supposed to have me in there for that long.
That is funny. Well, I you know, if you think about how many moving parts there are and the speed with which they want you to shoot and the budgets, I mean, you create some precarious situations at times. There's no doubt about it. So, but I've never felt unsafe on a set, ever.
That's good.
Ever.
Good.
And it's very interesting. The only times I felt unsafe on set, and this is very funny, is with other actors who claim they know how to handle guns. And they don't know how to handle guns at all. Because I don't know what it is about the male actor ego that has to say, I do my own stunts and I know how to handle guns. I ride horses. And they're never correct. They don't know how to ride a goddamn horse. They don't know how to handle a gun. And they're sitting there like, yeah, I handle guns all the time. And you're like, get this guy. And those are the times I feel most unsafe.
Kind of, since we already touched on C, I wanted to know, how did you come to be involved with C, and what, like when they said, like, we want you to play this character called the military, like what was your initial reaction to it?
Well, actually, I think what happened was my agent was running down some things that were happening, and one of them was C. And I said, oh, what is that character? And they weren't entirely sure what the character would become, but I said, this could be kind of fun. And Jason's always looking out for something so we can all hang out and bullshit. So I was like, oh, cool. Maybe this will work. So I called up Jason. I go, well, what do you think of this? He goes, oh, yeah, great idea. And so we were able to make that happen. And I mean, thankfully, Jonathan was on board too. I mean, he's ultimately, Jonathan's going to make the choice. And, fortunately, they thought it was a good idea. I don't know if Jonathan knew, again, who I was. It's a good question.
Yeah, I don't think he did either, because we've asked him about like, oh, how many more Stargate guys you have? And he was like, I don't know.
Well, I think he really didn't know. He goes, man, they are going crazy that you and this guy, David Hewlett, are going to be working together. It was really funny. So,
yeah. Speaking of that, what was it like getting to share the screen again with David Hewlett on season 3?
It was hilarious. You know why? Because he's still the same annoying little son of a bitch.
We're not going to clip that.
You still just want to smack him. You're like, oh, smart ass.
So you were definitely Team Momoa in the Hewlett Momoa fight. I know you don't want to say it, but you're saying it without saying it.
I actually was going to do something kind of funny. I thought, and maybe they could get the take, was I was going to pull a lemon out in C, which would have been like homage to our show. It was hilarious, and it's so simple. David is a great actor. He's so good. There are not a lot of actors that can. The man can take so much dense dialogue and put it into a rhythm that is. I can't tell you how really difficult it is, because exposition, and he gets saddled with the exposition. It's a tremendous amount of exposition, and it can really stop a lot of actors, or it can like really bore the crap out of a lot of audiences. And he's able to do it in a way that consistently works. But there's a lot of the McKay character in that, if you ask me. It's just a slightly more dark and twisted McKay, but it's the messed up scientist.
I think Hewlett told us a funny story about, like he'd be doing the techno gobbledygook to Jason, and Jason be like, "You think it's hard saying it? Try listening to it."
Yeah. That is correct. That is correct. Yeah.
There's one of my favorite scenes with you in season 2 of C is you and Dave Bautista on set together, and he's angry at you. I can't remember specifically why, but he's upset that he's not allowed to go do something.
It's about the peace talks.
Yeah, he has to answer to you. And I was watching this scene and here's Dave Bautista. He's just a freaking brick wall of a person. And he's like angry at you, like talking down to you, and you pull rank on him, and the scenario flips, and all of a sudden you see Dave Bautista just go, "Oh shit." And it was such a cool scene to watch you like pull rank on somebody that physically intimidating. What was like that? What was that like on set?
It might help that I was blind and didn't see how big he was. I mean, that's the beauty of acting, I mean, it's written into the script, and I first of all, I really liked working with him. He's such a nice guy, and I've seen him. He's gotten better and better and better as an actor over the years. And he's doing some really good work, and when he does blow up, it's intense. I mean, he's not to be messed with. At the end of the day, it's about the actors say something and they listen back, and if you're not listening, the other actor isn't able to like really shine. And so I give him credit for being able to listen. I've been in scenes before where there is that pissing match written into the script, but if the other actor doesn't yield to it the way the writer wants him to, you're left with this. And so, I give Dave Bautista the credit of like, going, he's my senior. And all great actors listen. I mean, it's actually a remarkably simple job, acting. It is. It quite literally is just listening. And so it was great to work with him. And, I like characters. I like all those characters. I like the authoritative character. It's fun to play. This is a different character than I'm used to playing. So, now that I'm whiskery and a bit gray.
Yeah, we're big fans of all the beards on the show.
Oh yeah, the beards in C are fantastic.
Oh yeah, I know. I don't know that they're all real, but yeah.
So one of the big things that we've learned in talking to cast and crew from C is the COVID restrictions were like really impactful on the way that the show was filmed. Can you tell us kind of like what your experiences was with the COVID restrictions during seasons 2 and 3?
In fact, okay, so they kind of just put production on hold for a while. They put all these other productions on hold. So I was in this kind of odd scenario where my house burned down a couple years ago from the fire in Malibu. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I kind of wanted to stay in town because I started a foundation to help people rebuild after the fire. And I was running this foundation, and I was like, I got to get a job in LA. and not be traveling. Now, there are not very many shows that shoot in LA, unfortunately. It's just become too expensive, except soap operas, which I kind of want to just admit that I had my head up my ass. And I always thought, no, I'm not doing soap opera. I don't do soap operas. It's one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. And those actors are so damn good. And it was intimidating. I would have 30, 40 pages of dialogue someday. It's really, it's not easy. So I was doing that, and the C thing came along at the same time, and then everything shut down. And I thought, damn, all my productions have shut down. And they finally said, well, we'll bring you up, but you have to be in a hotel for 2 weeks. Now, I was like, okay. Don't do that. Don't ever go into a hotel room by yourself for 2 weeks.
Yeah, you didn't realize they meant you have to stay there for 2 weeks.
It was so messed up, I can't even tell you. So it got so bad that the restaurant in the hotel closed, so you couldn't order even room service.
No.
So then I had to be like, well, now we have to call production and give them an order to go to the grocery store. But they didn't always come through.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my God.
like, pretty soon I'm like calling Uber Eats and everything else. And then also the protocol was a little odd. They didn't know how this was working out. And I would like submit, I'm like, here are the receipts for dinners or whatever. And they'd be like, well, those aren't our issue. And I go, well, I kind of think they are because I'm stuck in my hotel. And
oh my goodness.
one day I had to go downstairs to grab the Uber Eats, and the guy would not actually come up and give the food. So I went down, went out of the building, went to the corner, grabbed my food, came back. And the next day I got a phone call from production saying, it has been reported that you left the building.
God.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, I realized that the hotel is spying on me. I mean, it was spooky. I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy.
Did you have to start your 2 weeks over?
No, they were saying that I almost might have to.
Oh,
Oh my
God.
God. What did you do in a hotel room by yourself to entertain yourself? Did you just watch a shit ton of movies or?
No, I thought to myself, I'm going to be like, you kind of imagine, oh yeah, if I go to prison, I'm going to learn different languages. I'm going to be so constructive. I'm going to work out. I'm going to look good. None of it happened. Like the whole time-space continuum just bends because you're just like sitting there. And I realized that I started measuring things by the amount of light coming into my room.
Oh.
And I wasn't painting. I wasn't writing. I wasn't watching any shows. Occasionally would play the guitar. And then I decided that, well, I'm going crazy, I think. I'm just going to live stream like the descent of like sanity. I'm just falling apart and this could be entertaining. So I did a live stream almost every day, and it actually helped me a lot.
Oh, wow.
Because I was able to at least make contact and be, you know what? It forced me to be somewhat presentable.
Yeah. I saw something on your Instagram about your live streams, and I wondered if you were still doing that.
I haven't been doing it, but I should. Because the truth is I'm probably is equally crazy now as I was then. And I've gotten a lot of requests to keep those going. But what I thought I'd do is if I do a podcast, I can kind of take care of those two things.
Yeah.
But who knows? So if I have a podcast, you guys are going to help me out with that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The COVID thing was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And we worked through it to the degree we could.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kept thinking it was going to be over. You had no idea it was going to go on for 2 years.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So, cut to me. I'm in London. Yeah, I was in London in November. And I'm with Jason, actually. And Jason and I, we went to the Dave Chappelle show. And we're like goofing off, having a good time. Then we're in Dave Chappelle's dressing room, and it's like packed. And like I'm the one lone small white guy in the dressing room. And next thing you know, everybody's sick. like the next day. Like they all got COVID too.
Oh, wow.
And I thought to myself, is this ever going away? And so I think I got COVID too. I got one positive test and then a bunch of negative ones after that. And so I just, I keep thinking this thing's going to be over and it's not over.
Well, thankfully you're okay. I had a positive test. Was it 2 weeks ago? I got it from, I got it from work. Thankfully my whole family and I, we kicked it in a couple of days and some chicken soup and some vitamins, but I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad you recovered well.
Well, I mean, everybody I've talked to, it doesn't seem to be too serious, this particular strain.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is surreal. It's just, you couldn't write a movie that would make sense of it all. I mean, between the last 4 years of a reality show president and then on top of that, like a pandemic, that would be laughed out of a room if it was being pitched as a movie.
Yep. We watched one of the old Resident Evil movies recently, and it was like there's so many parallels. It's weird. Bananas, and I'm like, my gosh, man, we're living in like a freaking apocalypse zombie movie.
Yeah.
Well, Idiocracy, what did that come at? That must have been
Zombieocracy.
It's not very funny anymore.
No, it's not. It's too true. My next question for you is, I've heard rumors that you're not really that big into sci-fi as like an entertainment genre. Is that true? Is that accurate?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I love sci-fi.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm like, that sounds really weird for somebody who's in so many sci-fi shows.
No, I really like sci-fi.
Okay.
And it was funny because I went to the premiere of Dune while I was in London, and I was really happy because to me, I thought Dune was great. I really liked Dune. And it was nice to see a high production value, quality sci-fi movie out there. And I love sci-fi. It's really funny because I kind of, over the years, I just gained more and more affection for sci-fi. So I take great interest in sci-fi. I watch any sci-fi show I can watch, I'll watch.
Nice.
Just to check out what's going on. What is sci-fi? Well, that's a pretty big kind of
it's a broad
boundary these days. Yeah. But I still feel like there's a gap. There's no good action adventure sci-fi series where we had. I feel like that's a big hole. Unless you can tell me of a show out there that's providing that right now. I don't think there was one. And it's easier to make more than ever. I mean, when we first started the show, the effects were pretty kind of amateurish. And by the time we finished, they were movie quality effects.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear that you like sci-fi. So my next question is, what's your favorite show? What do you check out when you're watching either classic sci-fi? I mean, obviously besides Stargate, is there a show that you go to?
I really like this Station 11. It's the post-pandemic sci-fi series.
Oh, I haven't heard of it.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. There's a little girl, and she loses her parents, and it's fascinating. I love watching shows because I can always tell where they're shot. I love that. I'm watching it. Oh yeah, that's the East Docks of Lake Ontario near Hamilton. Those poor sons of a bitches have been there. And this show is obviously shot in Canada, but it's very well done. And basically, it's how society reassembles itself after an apocalypse. In this case, a fast-moving pandemic. I think it kills 90% of humanity in a very short period of time. And it's about a group of traveling actors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's kind of talks about the value of art in terms of keeping society and culture together. And I thought it was a really interesting take on things because it's not at all your typical sci-fi gloomy apocalypse. They could have a Mad Max scenario, but instead they have a traveling group of actors that perform Shakespeare and stuff.
Interesting.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, we just found it. It's on HBO.
Yeah, HBO Max.
Yeah. And actually, I have a friend who's one of the producers on it. So he told me to watch it, and I was really satisfied with it.
Review coming soon on the Salty Nerd podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk
There you
about
go.
it. Okay, so this is the biggest question for the day for me. You worked on a show or a movie, and I believe it was 2012, called Six Bullets with Jean-Claude Van Damme. You have to tell me, what was it like to be on set with one of the best freaking 80s action heroes of all time?
Yeah, we here at the Salty Nerd podcast love us some JCVD.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we need the tea on
We've
this
heard
spill.
so many crazy stories about him, and we want one from you.
Okay. It's funny. Rarely do I start a project where so much stuff is told to me before I get to set. Well, first of all, the producer wanted me. And as it turned out, Jean-Claude Van Damme is friends with Saint Pierre. And Saint Pierre, for those who don't know him, is like a legendary UFC fighter. And he wanted Saint Pierre to play the part. Now, granted, Saint Pierre is the part to some degree. But the producer said to Jean-Claude, he goes, well, we can teach Joe how to fight, but we can't teach Saint Pierre how to act. Which
was not true in the 80s.
Yeah, go watch other films so you can see that.
Yeah.
So anyways, the producer stuck to his guns. He wanted me to do it. So I kind of like walk in and I was like, well, I'm walking into a situation that could be a little volatile because I know that people have had volatile experiences with Jean-Claude. And so I was wary of that. And my producer gave me the whole spiel about like how to handle things. And then I knew that he didn't want me. He wanted somebody else. But then when I showed up, what I didn't realize that I'm like that much taller than Jean-Claude. And this is a big deal for actors sometimes, which I've never understood. By the way, I helped cast Jason on my show. And the guy's gigantic. Right?
And how tall are you, just to give us the perspective?
I'm a little over 6 feet. And
Okay.
I think Jason's like 6'4", 6'5", or something like that. In that
7'10", maybe.
7'10". Anyway, when they do a 2-shot, those are big deals because sometimes you can't put people on an apple. Listen, it's so funny. It's just one of those funny things. Every time I read for a Tom Cruise movie, the issue was height. That's the thing they wanted to know. How tall are you? And I would just say it knowing I'm never getting cast.
So just lie and say you're like 5'9".
It's just not happening. Yeah, and most actors are like 5'8" to 5'9". They're in that zone. They're actually not very tall. It doesn't matter because you can't really read it on screen until you put somebody next to them that is huge, like Dave Bautista, for example. Me sitting next to Dave Bautista, he must be 6'4" or 5. And I just thought the situation was going to be really tricky. He turned out to be a total gentleman with me. He was really nice, really great. And I was yearning to be kind of like tougher, in the kind of UFC man.
Well,
so
you
I
had
had
a neck tattoo
tattoos put on and things like that. And we shot in Romania, and I would go back to the hotel and they would, I'd have like blood on my hands from like some fight with tattoos all over. And when I walked into that hotel, I mean, people just scattered. I've never experienced that because over there, you don't have tattoos because they're cool. Nobody has tattoos. What they have are, if you have tattoos, it means you're part of the Russian prison system. And so they were like, ugh. But it was, I get into an elevator, everybody walk out. It was a very interesting experience. But I had a great time. And there are obviously certain challenges. And I think other actors might give you a slightly different story about their experience with him. And I know one of my co-stars would, because she wasn't so happy. And it just didn't happen to me personally.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. I don't know, maybe just because I'm pretty much the second lead on that movie. And maybe that was why, or I don't know any of it. But I know that he has a hard time memorizing dialogue. And that can be challenging. I mean, when you are the lead of a movie. And so that came into play a couple times. Now, having said that, that hasn't stopped a lot of other big actors from doing things. Because I don't know how important the dialogue is per se, so much as it is the presence of that particular character.
Yeah.
And the action.
And the splits.
Definitely the splits and muscles.
That's right. But I trained pretty hard, and it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed being in Romania, and I was a great experience, actually. It's a great experience. And by the way, a totally different genre that I got to like dig into a little, because that's a different fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So people come up to me for that one are not necessarily sci-fi guys.
Yeah. And speaking of doing different genres, I was wondering if, like, in everything that you've done, all of the different genres that you've performed in, like, is there a particular challenge or scene that was really hard, but then after the finished product was done, you thought, God, that was so worth it?
A lot of them. I mean, there's so many episodes of Atlantis that I just didn't think were going to turn out well at all. And that's when sometimes you really have to have faith in what other people do. The directors, writers, the editors, and everybody else. And you have to just do your thing and offer it up. And it's being an actor is a very unusual thing because you have very little control. You have just your interpretation. And when I watch a movie and it's not doing well, like the movie's not good, I could give you multiple reasons why it's not good. It's evident to me. And somebody could say, that was lame, I don't like the acting. And I'll look at it and go, no, the acting's fine. The editing's horrible. They're not capturing people the right way at the right time. And it makes them look like they're not acting well. But they're actually acting really well.
You could be a salty nerd, Joe.
I could be a salty nerd. I could be a salty critic on the Salty Nerd show.
Yes.
Yeah. But so I'm very tolerant toward shows that are subpar because I look at it and I see all the moving parts. So I'm pretty forgiving. And there's so many good actors out there that don't get the chance to shine with good material.
So you actually said something earlier that I'd like you to kind of expand upon, which was that you helped cast Jason in Stargate Atlantis. So can you tell us like what happened there?
I just want a commission for that somehow.
Joe discovered him.
Yes. Yeah.
You'd like an official
I
thank
would
you
love to
from
be
him?
able to say that too.
You know that guy from Game of Thrones?
Jason was going to be
Call me.
discovered regardless. The way I viewed it was they flew me down there. They wanted to cast this guy who was going to be kind of like my heavy,
Mm-hmm.
Run around and as a duo, we'd do our thing. And we went I flew down to LA. I think they had me read with 3 or 4 guys, Jason being one of them. And each guy would read, and sometimes they were really good actors, and sometimes they were not. And then Jason came in. And now here's a guy, he had dreadlocks. He's like 6'4" or 5", as we discussed. And he's wearing a torn up Hawaiian sanitation shirt. And it's a fine line between actor out of work and homeless guy. Always is. Always is.
Isn't that the truth?
It is the truth. And then they asked me who I liked. I go, it's obvious, Momoa. And there was a lot of resistance about that. And for various different reasons. One of them was, why would you want a guy on a show who's bigger and better looking than you? I was like, that's a really good question. And maybe I am not self-preserving. But I thought of it totally differently. This guy's presence was just insane. And I said, if I'm Han Solo, that's the closest goddamn thing to Chewbacca as we can come up with.
That's amazing.
And so, thankfully, like Brad Wright, agreed with me. He's like, yeah, I think this could work. And And so we were able to cast him. And my feeling was like, he's going to get cast someplace. And my feeling was, I think the guy's going to be a movie star. I thought right away, this guy could be a movie star. And so he had never really done an ongoing series much, like where he had to wake up at 6 o'clock every morning and find his way to work and do all that stuff. And contrary to what you may have thought he was, again, the guy with the mifia and the brie and the cranberry,
Yep.
he was, boom, wasn't late for work, he was responsible, he did his thing, he was easy to be with. And but I do think Atlantis was the first time he understood what the rigor of a working actor is, and the schedule and everything else. And so I think it was a good training ground for him. So yeah, that was my story of Jason Momoa. Again, I would love to take credit for it, but if I wasn't here telling you that story, somebody else would be, because he was going to get cast someday. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be the title for the interview, is Joe Flanigan finds Jason Momoa, or that's going to be it. That's the thumbnail.
Yeah.
Or seeks compensation.
Yeah, there you go. Wants his due.
Yeah, I want my royalties.
Yeah. Aquaman, Game of Thrones, hand it over.
But to be honest with you, I enjoy getting older, because you do it's like all these different roles are going to open up, the character, as you mentioned, I get a pull rank on Dave Bautista. I'm an older guy, and the older person gets like a certain type of gravitas that I like. And so it's exciting on that level to grow older. And you have to put your ego in check a little, because a lot of us are used to playing the lead. Suddenly you're not the lead anymore. So
now you're the mentor. You're Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, I wish.
I think they might be making something right now, but it's called The Last of Us. And there's a character named Joel that I think now would be really a good fit for.
That's a Mandalorian guy.
Who's in that now?
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal's Joel.
Flanagan would be way better.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was a video game?
Yeah. It's called The Last of Us. It's a post-apocalyptic zombie scenario.
It's going to be an HBO original series.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, already done.
Already done.
I know. Are we going to find a new one?
Thanks for bringing that up there. One thing that's funny, though, is that, again, it goes back to the stunt thing. It's like I never read for Yellowstone. I showed up. I was like, I grew up on a ranch. I grew up riding horses. I grew up shooting guns. And I was like, why are they getting all the guys who've never done it? For Christ's sake. That does drive me a little bit crazy. And I don't know if being in sci-fi, where they kind of go, oh, he's sci-fi, they're Western, they're comedy, and they're this. There's a little bit of that in this town. But I look at a show like that and I was like, I should be doing a show like that. That's pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's like a saddle, no pun intended.
Jude and I are both huge Yellowstone marks. We love Yellowstone.
It is known.
I just started watching the prequel,
It's so
1883, and it's great. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's right. They just did the prequel.
Yeah. I don't know how many seasons they're planning on doing with that, but jump in on that, man. You'd fit the bill perfectly.
I mean, Cole Hauser was in Sci-Fi before he was Rip on Yellowstone.
Yeah,
so.
And I don't know Cole, but I know his wife, because they're twins. They're the Sweet Valley High. Remember Sweet Valley High?
Oh yeah.
You remember the twins? He's married to one of the twins.
I do remember that. Yeah. I think I did read that somewhere.
Brittany and Jessica. Yeah, and it does. I ran into her right before he took off. She goes, "Yeah, he's taken off to do the show Yellowstone." I thought, "Oh, I haven't heard of it." But yeah, those type of things. I mean, I grew up also in that country, so
yeah,
you would think that it would be. Who knows where I'll end up? Who knows?
Yeah,
might end up on a podcast reviewing sci-fi shows.
Yeah. Speaking of things you've read and growing up with horses, I read somewhere that Jason has a crippling fear of horses. Is that true?
That is one of the few things I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So I have yet to go over to his house on a horse.
Okay. Let us know.
I don't think he does, though. In Conan, he's on a horse all the time. In Game of Thrones, he's on a horse.
Yeah, that's where I read it. Was we were reviewing Conan, and one of the blurbs about the movie was that all of his scenes with horses were with stunt doubles because he doesn't like horses.
Well, I will tell you that sometimes if you don't get a well-trained horse, you look like an ass.
Yeah, I bet.
So maybe you give it to the stunt man.
I'm terribly frightened of horses, so
Are
I mean,
you?
I get it if it's true. Oh yeah, my sister's a big horse gal, and I am so not.
Yeah, well, horses are gigantic.
They're giant, man. They're
and
giant.
They can crush you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that I ended up I had to show in equestrian when I was younger, and I'm growing up on this ranch in Nevada outside of Reno, and no guy had ever worn English riding outfits in that part of the world. And my dad thought I had to show equestrian, which was one of the most humiliating things of my life. I was like, you got to be kidding me, Dad. Look at me. You can't send me out there. There are cowboys out there. He was like, oh, that's how you're going to ride. You need to ride properly. And he reduced my riding that I could only ride Western a couple days of the week. And it was pretty frustrating. I'm still probably getting over it, you know. If I had a shrink, that would be the issue we'd be talking about.
I'm sorry. You seem a little triggered right now. I apologize.
I wonder if that's a thing because I grew up on a cattle ranch myself up in Southern Oregon, and my mom wanted us to take English riding lessons too. And I'm like, no, I need a saddle with, you know, a saddle horn on it that I can tie my rope around and, you know, do cowboy shit. And yeah, so I can relate to that. I never understood the jumping around over the fences and things.
I don't think anybody does. I mean, I still don't. And all I wanted was a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Right.
And he said, okay, you get a first place in a horse show and I'll get you a motorcycle. Now, cut to like 3 years later, I still haven't had any first place. I don't think I even had a fifth place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think he felt sorry for me, and I just ended up getting a motorcycle, and that was the end of my riding. So, yeah, motorcycles or Western horses, that was it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you were in both season 2 and 3 of C. So I wanted to know, is there anything about season 3 you could tell us? Give us a little sneak peek into it.
I don't know. What am I allowed to say?
Anything you want, man.
We promise we won't get.
I can see myself getting into big trouble.
Trapper said you can tell us everything.
Yeah, wink, wink.
Oh, he did. I think it's just really well done. I think that the show gets better and better and better too, and it becomes more and more interesting. I'm going to be really careful about what I say about that stuff because I just feel like that's out of my league, revealing what happens. Until I get the memo that says I can, I'm just afraid to. I'm afraid. I'm not a big enough part of that where I can just override those edicts. So, you know, but everybody dies.
Do you have any scenes with Momoa in season 3?
No.
Oh.
Can't believe that. I know. It's a shame. So,
But you do have some scenes with David Hewlett, yes?
I do.
Good.
Okay.
Cool.
Hewlett and
Good.
Batista, yeah.
All right.
I do. And one of the scenes, unfortunately, we had a really good scene, too, that we had to cut because I had some family emergency issues and I couldn't get back to Canada to finish that scene. So I thought they were going to reschedule it, but they couldn't. So there was a scene between just me and Hewlett. It would have been great. Would have been amazing. Would have been the best thing that ever happened in the history of entertainment.
I'm very upset.
The
for
Stargate
you.
fandom would have lost it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
No, we totally agree with you, though. The show is getting better and better with every season.
Yeah.
And I was curious. We've heard from a lot of the production crew, like Mike Snyman, who's the cinematographer, that like our podcast where we just take the absolute piss out of the show is a big hit on the production crew with like Saturday mornings. Did you hear about us on set at all? What was the word around the
I
camp?
didn't hear anything other than Jonathan told me, he goes, will you do an interview with these guys? I guess they're big fans of the show you did. And I said, okay. All right.
Finally, somebody's honest.
Yeah.
I never heard about you guys.
Yeah.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Expectations,
I love
just
it.
bring them back down a little bit, bud.
Welcome to
Finally.
reality,
Yeah.
Alex.
Jonathan told me to do it. He's right
What a big
here.
deal. Who? Yeah,
Yeah, he's standing there with behind you with a cattle prod.
I'm going back to my hotel prison. Okay.
Well, actually, the most fun I've had in this whole genre is the fan participation is just incredibly cool. So, that's not a lot of things. If you're in a regular scripted 1 hour, I don't think the guys in Yellowstone have the same kind of passionate fan base as we have in sci-fi. So participating with the fan base is a lot of fun. So I like doing that stuff.
Yeah, there's probably less cosplayers for Yellowstone than there are for Stargate.
Yes, they're probably, or unironic cosplayers.
Yeah.
Even worse.
Like we were at the Star Trek convention, and half of the Star Trek convention here in Vegas was just Stargate stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so cool.
And Doctor Who.
And Doctor Who, yeah, lots of Doctor Who stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Stargate and Star Trek, they're inseparable. Like when you go to these conventions. But so who's in Vegas?
Oh, we all are.
We all are.
Yeah,
Are
that's
you
all
guys
of
in the
us.
studio together right now?
Yeah.
Oh, you all have 3 separate cameras.
We got 4.
Oh my God. I thought, no wonder they get along. No wonder they get along. They're never together.
Oh, there's a moment we spent. We were at the Star Trek convention. We spent like a whole week together at a booth at the Star Trek convention, and by the end of
nobody murdered each
by
other.
the end of the week, we're like, I think we're gonna take a break. For
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so you just did live interviews there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we basically live streamed the entire convention for 8 hours a day
Yeah.
while we were there.
Yeah.
I talked to Dina Meyer one day, and I asked her if she would come over and talk to us, and she did this.
No.
Oh, really?
And I was like, that's fair.
That's so funny. It's so funny. I worked with Dina.
You did? Oh my God, Vader's obsessed with her.
So Dina and I went to school in Paris at the same time on the same program. Years ago, I think I was 20, 21 years old.
Wow.
And that's how long I've known Dina.
Oh,
Cut
wow.
to
That's
us
awesome.
working as actors on, what show are we on? It was a show about like a Catwoman, Batwoman type of thing.
Oh, Birds of Prey.
Birds of Prey. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
Birds of Prey. Like that? See how specific I am? Catwoman, Batwoman.
Yeah, that cat thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I haven't seen her in a while, though.
Well, tell her we say hi.
Yeah. We have a special rating system for Dina Meyer movies. It's great. It's all based off of her fantastic job in
Starship
Troopers.
Starship Troopers. Yeah. Yes. Well, Casper is a friend of mine, too.
Every time we see a redhead in a movie, it's like, oh, look, it's not Dina Meyer.
Yes.
It needs to be Dina Meyer.
We literally call other actors not Dina Meyer because we think they all should be.
Yeah, roles that we think she should be in.
Yeah.
In a Dina-centric universe, that is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my last question is about Newman. I wondered, how old is he? Is he a good boy? And how did you come up with his name?
Look at the digital.
Hi, Newman.
He's right there. He just calls him.
Hi, my name's Newman.
Is it like the Seinfeld Newman, or what are we going with?
So
here for the name?
Newman, when he was born, he had blue eyes, like Paul Newman.
Okay.
And then they changed to like kind of a green, or like kind of a greenish color. And so I can't make that reference point. I also realize how old that reference point is for most people. So there's a lot of younger people out there who don't even know who Paul Newman is.
That's
sadly.
outrageous.
That is very sad.
And so they say Newman as the Seinfeld character, which probably works just as well for Newman.
Yeah. And how old is he?
Newman's about 2 years old.
He's due.
He's a puppy. That's a puppy.
He still acts
Adorable.
like a puppy.
Oh,
Yeah, he's hilarious.
So cute.
He's good company. And again, he makes me feel smart and pretty. And
get it.
I've always had English Bulldogs, and I just love him.
How many have you had?
He's my 3rd English Bulldog.
Oh, wow.
Right on.
Yeah, and I've had French bulldogs too, but English bulldogs are the best. English bulldogs are the best. And I actually, of all the animals I've had, and I grew up with a ton of animals, um, I've never seen a dog get more attention than this dog. Like when I go someplace with this dog, it's a showstopper. For some reason, people just stop. They're like, "Oh my God, it looks like his head got dipped in paint." Blah blah blah.
Anytime your Instagram has Newman on it, I'm like glued to the phone
Yeah.
and watching it.
Bulldogs are instant topic discussion starters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they
Yep.
have such a sad, ironic. I think it just like reflects our inner soul, like or something. It's like, we all look ridiculous.
Smoking a cigarette.
Make fun of me, I don't care.
So, Joe, are you working on any new projects that you care to inform us about?
Well, I'm trying to put together a podcast, and that's what I'm going to dress you guys down for your knowledge on that issue. I had to put things on pause for a while.
What's it going to be about?
Okay, well, I thought long and hard about this, and I don't like to get pigeonholed. And I don't know about you guys, but you have a certain angle, okay? So, like, it's going to be sci-fi and all that sort of stuff. Like, my interests are, like, relatively, like, large, and so I know a lot of, like, I've done a couple interviews with a neuroscientist, a couple interviews with an athlete, an actor, but I don't want to limit it. And I don't know. I feel like some people are telling me that's a mistake, that you want to get as specific as possible. And I feel like I don't want to tie my hands like that, because I may want to talk about something completely different one day than the other day.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I should just put that out to everybody. Vote on that.
Immediately, that reminds me of, like, if it's going to be an interview style, it's going to be like a Joe Rogan thing where he just has anybody and everybody on to talk about a huge, various conversations, topics and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's definitely a market for it.
Yeah, well, it's probably a very saturated market for it. You know me, always coming in right on time. Jesus.
Well,
I'm investing in typewriters right now. Yeah.
Like, we were like, hey, we're going to start a podcast about what? Movies and TV shows. That's never been done before.
Yeah.
I'm so far behind the curve. I was reading in this article in The Economist about cryptocurrency, and I go, I need to restructure my cryptocurrency investments. And so I go to it. I'm like, I de-invest in Ethereum. I'm going to these other things. And I'm like, oh, they've already been completely peaked and they've already fallen apart. I'm so far behind the game that I thought to myself, I need to, like, hire young people to just keep me fresh,
plugged in. Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, I took some investment advice from one of my sons, and those investments have done better than anything I came up with.
Yeah.
So
the cryptocurrency market is a young man's game. I can't keep up with it either. I'm like, oh, NFTs are cool. Oh, that's already way ahead now.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, NFT, are they like, do they come on after the NFL or
There you are.
I'm like, what's this pixelized monkey thing? What does that do? Oh, it's going for $3.5 million. What?
My favorite term is degen.
Oh yeah,
degen thing.
I'm waiting for us to jump into the metaverse with this podcast where we have just 3D cameras all around us and people can put little headsets on and act like they're in the room with us. That's going to be the next genre.
Well, it is. At the same time, I'm like, does that also peak? I mean, I feel like, is that being oversold? Because the truth is, it's just an augmented online experience, isn't it? That's all it really is. I mean, rather than you typing something in and getting a bunch of information, you're sent to a location.
Yeah.
And you're just now wandering around the information, which is cool. But at what point are you going to be, you know how they thought VR was going to be a big deal and it kind of just never quite took off. And I'm wondering, does this all fall flat too? I don't know.
I'm kind of like, when we get to Star Trek style holodecks, give me a call. But until then, I'm good.
We're getting pretty. There's a place here in Vegas. I think it's at one of the big casinos where they have a holodeck room like that, and you put on the headset with a haptic vest, and
not the same.
But you're not departicularized to another location.
No,
quite yet. That's
Not
a different
yet.
app altogether. Yeah.
I'm gonna be like Bones when it comes to transporters. Like, don't put me in that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How come nobody ever told me my ass was this big?
By the way, they do stick you when you do an action figure. They do stick you in the thing, and they scan your whole body.
Oh my God!
And it is kind of interesting.
Do you have an action figure of yourself in your house somewhere?
No. Why do you think I would have action figures of myself?
Come on. Listen, we saw Hewlett's entire nerd room. It's fine. Nothing you could show us would be nerdier.
I thought that'd actually be funny. Is like you cut to me like, what's Joe Flanigan doing these days? And I'm playing with my action figure. I'll shoot you. No, you shoot me.
That's amazing. We're going to write the script.
Yeah. He's got an Aquaman figure. Khal Drogo's in the back.
We did actually come up with the idea that if they're not going to remake Atlantis, we'll just do the live action. I mean, the little stick figure version of Atlantis with our action figures. Stop motion. I think it'd be kind of funny.
I'd watch it.
Matt and Trey Parker need to write for it, though.
All right. Well, we're out of questions, Joe. Thank you so much for doing this with us. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you guys.
It's fantastic to get to know you on a personal level. That's super cool for us,
cool.
super nerds over here.
If you're ever in Vegas, we want to hang out.
Yes. Yeah. That goes for all of our guests that come on the podcast. You guys come to Vegas, we'll buy you a drink.
Bring Newman. He can hang out with Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell. And now if I am arrested and need to make a phone call in Vegas, can I also call you guys?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good.
Now, our patrons will put up your bail. No problem.
All right,
we'll cover
guys.
that for you. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much. Again, you said you were working on some projects. Where can people find you on social media so they can check out Newman's adventures?
Joe Flanigan Official is the Instagram, and I'm a bit remiss in my Instagram post from the last week, but I'm going to catch up. And yeah, you can get plenty of Newman there. Yeah, I'm exploiting Newman's cuteness as much as possible.
Yeah, I check in on Newman a lot.
Yeah.
As you
Don't
should.
stop. It's amazing. It's amazing.
All right.
Vader, where can they find you on the socials, bud?
Just really quick, I wanted to say thank you to Joe for hanging out with us on our little show here. I'm a huge fan. Every time we have people on this show, I just get completely kind of a little starstruck. I'm not going to lie. It's really awesome. And thank you for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
We all do. And it's really cool to be able to talk to you, man.
You guys have a great job.
So yeah.
Thanks
to you. Thanks to my friends here for making it happen. And it's just, I never thought a year ago I'd be talking to you and other people that we like doing this silly little thing. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So you can find me at MattVader74 on all these social medias, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook now. Yeah. So
Right
out
on.
there.
And Jude, go ahead.
You can find me at I am Jude Juju on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, or you can check out my webpage at thevoiceofjude.com. And again, to piggyback on my good friend Vader here, Joe, it's such a great time talking to you. Thank you so much for making the time for us.
Thank you guys. I can't wait to present my less professional version of a podcast.
Anytime you want to interview us, we'll make time.
We'll be there. Go ahead, buddy.
You can find me at Matthew Kadish, Kadish on Twitter. KadishBooks.com takes you to our Amazon page. Mr. Flanigan, thank you so much for coming on our show. We really appreciate it. And it's nice to know that you're such a cool guy. Like we probably could have talked for another couple hours, but we just
respect your time.
Yeah, we respect your time.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this special episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, comment below, and stay tuned. We have a ton of Stargate content coming your way. And of course, we're going to be reviewing season 3 when that drops in September, I believe, of this year. So I hope you guys enjoy the content. And as always, stay salty, my friends.